Here we are in week 5, and we're going to be looking at manipulating audio signals to create new sounds through the use of audio effects.
Yeah, if we think back to last week and our exploration of synthesis, we already introduced a few basic effects through our discussion of signal modifiers that are used in synthesis.
And I guess the critical thing with audio effects is signal manipulation. It doesn't really matter what the signal is. It could be audio, video, MIDI, for example. But what we're doing is we're changing that signal and creating some kind of new outcome.
Yeah, and I mean, audio effects, they're great for turning, say, old sounds into new sounds, for example, but they've also been instrumental, in the development of the creative use of the recording studio and really are the cornerstone of what we think of as modern music production.
And I guess they've become one of the ways in which we can correct certain issues, such as through the use of auto-tune.
Yeah, I mean, it's a much maligned effect in a way and very controversial, but it's probably... if we look at the history of effects and where we're up to now, then auto-tune's kind of the peak of that kind of approach to studio production, at this point where, you can take almost any sound now and manipulate it in ways that were unheard of in the past.
And what we find is effects belong to one of two domains, that being the analog domain, where the sound is represented as a continuous voltage, or the digital domain, where the sound is represented as a stream of binary numbers.
Yeah, and if we think about, analog audio effects, basically the way they work is an audio signal comes in, it runs through some kind of circuit with resistors and diodes and so on, and then we hear the outcome of that sound transformed after the effect. And a good example of that would be a typical guitar effects pedal, such as a tube screamer or other pedals like that.
And conversely, we have digital audio effects through, for example, plugins indoors, such as Audacity, which we've been using. And the plugin may be, for example, a reverb, and all that reverb is basically doing is manipulating that stream of binary numbers in code and outputting a sound which has another characteristic of a space mapped onto it, whether it be a bathroom, a concert hall, or outdoors.
Yeah, so unlike our analog example, with digital effects, because we're dealing with, numbers, effectively zeros and ones, the audio effects actually created, normally through using some kind of complex mathematical algorithm on those numbers to actually then modify the sound that we're hearing.
And whether it's analog or digital, basically all effects fall within one of 4 families. Sometimes they cross over families, but those 4 families are amplitude-based effects, frequency response, distortion, and also time delay-based effects.
Yeah, so if we think about an amplitude-based effect, a noise gate's a really good example. So the way a noise gate works is that you have an audio signal. When it's below a certain level, the effect actually cuts the signal off, but as soon as the audio signal rises above a certain level, it will let the signal through, and so that creates the noise gate effect.
And in the case of the frequency response-based effects, equalizers, that's the really common one, and obviously filters that you find on synthesizers which manipulate the overall frequency content of the sound.
Yeah, and distortion-based effects, you've got things like, tube distortion, again, talking about guitar effects like we were before, a lot of famous guitar amplifier, manufacturers are famous for their tube distortions, and certainly, that's defined a whole bunch of genres of popular music, for example.
And my favourite's the time delay-based effects, which gives us reverb, which we've just talked about, also feedback delay or echo, and also flanging, phasing, and chorusing.
So in our next videos, we're going to unpack some of these effects families and look at the natural phenomena that actually inspired some of these audio effects. To do this initially, we're going to have a look at a special room called an anechoic chamber, which, is one of the few places that you can go and experience silence.